One thing I did want to talk about before anybody else gets on is this Faker contract that was just signed with
Yeah, I
T1.
have some thoughts on that. Yeah.
Well, would
So
you like to
basically,
share them?
if people didn't see, obviously every time Faker has re-upped his contract, he gets one of the biggest contracts because even to this day, like I don't think people appreciate the way the Chinese market works. It's not that you actually have to be at your peak, as many of the great players, one of the Samsung players, obviously Faker the first time he got offers. It's like the name Faker is so crazy now that it's same as I've heard like the last few years that people like, I think people like Bjergsen even have had Asian offers. Like the name alone is so crazy that a streaming service, someone with a big backer would pay you a lot for it. So obviously Faker is still a really good player and in theory would probably still command like record buyout, highest salary in the world. So he's not only signed for another big deal with T1, because remember it has been rebranded now. You're not supposed to call it SKT anymore. So it's T1. And the key element is that dreaded term, he's got some ownership. I almost feel like, even though I know what they mean by the term ownership, you almost shouldn't use that in esports because the average pleb will just genuinely think, if I was to own something, it would be mine. And so I could do whatever I want. You know, they'll just do that. What you should say, basically, even though it's the same thing,
He probably
is
owns
the
like
person has
1%.
exactly what you should say is the person
Maybe.
has a minor equity stake.
Yes.
And maybe even specify that they have no deciding power. You know, like all they can ever do is one day, if the company makes money, make a tiny amount of it back and have a tiny ownership stake. Because the real problem is this, Monty. When a pleb sees that, they go, player becoming part owner of the team. So then it's like his team. So he could do all this and he could sign this player and he'll probably do. And what I actually think is, I wonder what that 1% is ever going to actually be worth. I wonder if they'll ever get anything from that. Or, you know, that's all I think. Like, unfortunately, it's not as sexy a story as it seems. Like. The real story here to me is that Faker's probably going to play with T1 his whole career,
right?
Which I think is pretty cool, actually. Like as much as I thought even the Bjergsen one with TSM had some issues with it, where I don't actually know if he's worth that on the market today. I do appreciate the idea, that old school throwback sports idea, that if you're a great player and you get lucky enough to go to a team, you can almost play with one team your whole career. Bjergsen obviously was with some other ones before, but like Faker would be just his whole career with, in theory, the best Korean team. That's a pretty cool legacy to have.
Yeah, and I also think it's good because it perpetuates what's been happening in esports for a long time. And I think really the bigger news is that when he comes back from his military service, that he's going to have a job with T1 in some kind of leadership position. And
that's a big deal for Korea for sure.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, like Boxer famously, when he first finished his military service, came back and played with, or was a coach and a leader within SKT. So there's been a history of sort of recycling old players back into leadership or coaching positions within these rosters, even in different games. Obviously, in League of Legends, famously Reach came back and was coaching for Najin. But many of the players come back. I think Zelos was running the front office of CJ Entis for a while. So there's a bunch
the
of
last couple of years. I don't know if he's still in the league, but I Love Uv was actually the coach of Afrika Freaks.
Yeah, he's still there. Yeah. But a lot of these players come back to their original teams, especially the old Kespa teams like KT and CJ and SKT. A lot of these teams have recycled their star players like Boxer back in. So this is just another step on that cycle. But for me, that's actually a more important announcement than the minor equity stake he's going to be getting. That, you know, who knows if you can own something, but it's only valuable in that case if you sell it, or if you're getting some level of share of the profits or anything like that. So who knows what that's ever going to be worth, because, you know, one of the issues is that we have being in esports is that most teams are not profitable. So you're not getting a share of the profits.
Yeah, there's another thing. Like I hate to burst anyone's bubble because they're going to go, but what are you talking about? Like, SK Telecom is an enormous company. Like the actual esports division of SK Telecom, not least because they have players like Faker on their payroll, almost certainly does not make money. It's almost certainly a money-losing exercise. Not least because it actually has the original reason which worth losing money, which is the same reason the League of Legends game used to lose money. It's basically marketing. Yes. It's not supposed to be a company that makes money. It's just a cool way to advertise SKT.
Now that's changing, I think, with part of the Comcast joint venture. Is the purpose is eventually to make it profitable, right? But I do think what's funny about this is that Faker is getting equity in a company that almost certainly is losing revenue. And the reason they're losing revenue is most likely because he has a giant salary. I mean, if we just think about this, if I just had to estimate, if I had to guess what Faker's being paid, I would say probably somewhere in the $4 to $5 million a year range, based on my knowledge of other players' salaries and my perception of his value, especially his value to T1. And especially because now, given the history of Comcast just splashing out in this space since they entered with Overwatch League and the Philadelphia Fusion, and entering into this agreement with T1, like, I think they have infinity dollars, so they don't really care. Anyway, that's
it's also worth pointing out as well, whether you think he's the best player or not anymore, it doesn't matter. Like, it ultimately, people who are orgs think about winning, and he did just come off a year where they won both the splits, so that also still makes your market value insanely high.
He just came off of this last week beating, ostensibly the on paper most powerful team in the LCK in Gen G, right? I think most people were tipping Gen G.
They have the best roster.
Yeah, to potentially
we
be
can
the
debate
favorite
whether
this season.
It's better. They play them next, luckily.
Huh?
You can debate whether Dragon X is better, but they play SKT pays them next anyway, so we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this is all very interesting times, but we should probably get our guests in. Sorry, guys, we're going to take a brief break while I fix the cameras again. And we will be back in just a few minutes with Blaber and Finn. So hold tight. All right, here we are. Finally back with Blaber and Finn. Cloud Connections, presented by AT&T. Finn decided that he needed to go into the Rogue studio. He has a nice backlight. His hair is artfully draped over his eye, looking very handsome.
He does look like an anime character or something. It's pretty ridiculous. Like, too much, the fashion's way too... you're actually inappropriately dressed for this show, but you're overdressed. I've never heard that before in something inside. I used to just wear a coat, mate. That was it.
He's just making sure that people know what it's going to look like when we actually have a studio. By the way, I do have an update on that. So fun fact, thanks to the American government and their building inspections, we will not have the studio for longer. Hopefully the American government won't also mess with Thorin's visa, which is the next possibility that could occur. So now we're looking at probably sometime mid-March. So you just get more webcams until then. But yes, eventually, exactly. I promise you it will happen once the American government stops interfering with our plans.
The thing is, though, it can be, the government sometimes can make for cooler storylines. Like, it was kind of cool the way that they just did Cloud9 a favor and made them look like they were the best team in NA for a while. Because, it's been years since they've had the best team on it. Like, someone had to do something, So if you just make Team Liquid play with 4 players, it turns out actually they're pretty good. The joke is, though, one of the 4 is actually Schönfire. So I did there. We'll talk about that later in the show. So,
dude, you can't do him like that.
He was actually pretty decent, mate. It wasn't even the worst thing about Team Liquid. It's the saddest thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us what the worst thing about Team Liquid is, Blaber?
I mean, I personally didn't think Stern was that bad. I didn't think he was great.
I didn't ask you how sure. What's the worst thing about Team Liquid?
Yeah.
I think.
Is it double lift? Feels like double lift, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't know. Their ball lane, I don't know. Like, I think Jets has been playing really well. I don't think Stern's been that bad. I don't know. It seems like double lift's not as prepared or focused. I'm not really sure, but I think his performance hasn't been as good as it's always been. And I don't know why. But he doesn't look great on Senna either. But
yeah, okay. Yes, people are saying it's Senna. Senna doesn't also force you to walk into thresh hooks. She doesn't have some sort of magnet that attracts those to her. That's actually just positioning.
I mean, at least when we scrim against them, the reason I think TL struggles the most with Senna is when they have a timing. Like, the teams have timings to swap for heralds these days. Double lift doesn't actually like matching, and you can't actually take towers as Senna or push fast.
That's
so
true.
When they don't match, they just lose out so much. And you can, like, as Zaya or Aphelios with the right guns, you can take the towers really easily, but he doesn't like swapping. So as Senna, he can't really do that.
Well, Finn, you've been watching some NA. I know.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound like a Senna-specific issue, if you ask me, but maybe it's nice to have something to blame it on.
I'll give you my theory, Craft, because first of all, if you look at the last few years, actually the Team Liquid teams, even when they had their full lineups, sometimes did have like slightly slower starts, or they looked like they sort of like worked their way into form during the splits because they were the best team as well, so they could sort of take the liberty of doing that. But I would say the bigger issue is kind of what we hinted to last week, which is because actually a lot of the issues in their team don't look like it's just Schönfire just feeding and everyone else playing great, but just not having Broxer. I actually think it is just like they've done. This is where I wonder if Kane as a coach can have any impact, because I know being Korean, it's going to be difficult to like psychologically analyze people who are from another culture. But I feel as though the Team Liquid team has done that thing where it's like until Broxer comes, they don't feel like the split's actually begun. It's like, oh, you know, we haven't got our real team, so none of these games count. And if you have that mentality, even in practice, like you're not going to improve. You're not going to be at a good level now because you're just waiting to begin. So you're acting like none of these games count, but they do, unfortunately. Like this will count towards the end of the split. It won't count towards whether you go to Worlds or not, but it will actually matter. So I think like even if they couldn't have done massive improvements with Schönfire because they're going to get a totally different player who comes in, I still think they probably didn't start with the right mindset at the beginning of the split.
Yeah, I also think, it depends on how much people think that MSI practice is going to translate into summer split results as well, because ostensibly what you guys are playing for right now is the potential to go to MSI, which in and of itself is the potential to scrim and compete against top teams and improve, right? So in a weird way, you're kind of just fighting for the chance to improve and hoping you don't burn out in the end, which is a very weird way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's weird to say like a team doesn't want to win, like even if it's spring. I mean, maybe that's their mentality, but I don't think you should ever think like that as a player. Like I just don't want to lose. And then also, I mean, we've never been to MSI.
I mean, you just want to be on stage, mate. You only used to get to play about 2 games to split something. So you're not loving the chance to be a starter.
I guess, yeah. I mean, we've never been to MSI, so I think we really want to go. And then also, we haven't won a split in a long time, so I think that's why C9 is working really hard compared to other teams. I mean, I guess
you used to be the Schönfire. So stick with it, Schönfire. Anything can happen, mate. They might just kickbox an expert to bring you in. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it could be okay for Schönfire. They'll sell Broxer.
Just trick someone into buying Broxer for way too much money. Team he goes to doesn't quite pan out, and then your player actually, what the hell? He's good all along. That's a Reaper's 200 IQ move there.
That's right. Big up your MVP. Make sure that you increase Svenskeren to maximum value. Sell to EG. Don't lose anything actually in the process. I think this is just another bid for coach of the split, showing that it was him all along, not his MVP players, right?
Yeah. Reaper just he's too big Brady sneaking in the lock card.
All right, so
can we talk about C9? They are undefeated, man.
Yes, we should actually talk about Cloud9 now that we have a Cloud9 member on, and Finn, who I assume watches Cloud9 because they're the only team worth watching, I think, in the LCS right now.
It's the only team the only LCS team that Rogue probably couldn't beat in a best of 5. So there you go.
It's a bold statement, but we'll have to see it at MSI maybe.
Yeah, we'll have to see it at MSI.
Yeah, we'll talk about how you could actually make it to MSI given G2's current condition later. But I think what's interesting about C9 is I have a very difficult time getting a read on them because no one's actually challenging anything you guys do. And every week I hear, oh yeah, this week, last week it was, oh yeah, they're going to play Dignitas and FlyQuest. This is the real test. Instantly body everybody. This week, oh, TSM, they turned it around from week 1, really going to look good. And then we see whatever that game was, which we can talk about specifically because there was an early deficit that may have been caused by a certain jungler not calculating Elise's damage properly.
Okay,
what happened?
I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I want to hear about it.
He actually trolled me. He said, so I wasn't really looking at Redacted, and he said, if you land the cocoon, I'm going to one-shot him. So then I keep going forward because I assume he's going to one-shot him, and then Redacted's just sitting on me for 5 seconds before he's even there, and then he said, oh, actually, I can't be there. Like, afterwards. In the review, and I'm just like, okay.
All right, so what we're going to need is C9 to release the comms for verification that this is
wait
in
a
fact
minute.
the sequence of events.
When I had Niski on my show with Dominic, the Crackdown, he basically tried to jokingly take credit for why Svenskeren was so good and now why Blaber's so good. So he was like, in the mid 2v2, I'm just really good, I work with these guys. It's like, yeah, no wonder they have to win the MVP. You're just putting them in ridiculous scenarios. Is he like one of those old school kung fu masters who just throws you in the shit? You're like, what? You have to, and if you get out of it, then you obviously the best, aren't you? So I can see what he means by
it's like
2v2
whiplash
synergy. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'll put my temple, Blaber. Go in.
I mean, I do think Niski does make his junglers look a lot better because I think he moves a lot more than most mid laners. He doesn't care about much about farming, which is good and bad. Like sometimes it hurts. Like in the TL finals game, when he played Kiana versus LeBlanc, he just sacked like so many waves, and he couldn't really play after. But I think for the most part, it's pretty easy to play with Niski, because he plays a lot more for me and what I want to do, and he always helps me out. So it's definitely nice.
Even though that was actually a really good example you gave, that's a bit brutal, man. You only just started playing full time, right? Except for that time when we could have won that championship. Shame he sacked all those waves in it, but it can be good as well. Be good too. All right. Well, I'd have gone with some fun example from practice that didn't matter or anything, but I like the way keep him honest. Keep him honest. Do your job.
So what was going on in this game? Because this comp that TSM drafted, what is it exactly supposed to do? Because it looks like, when you take a first glance at it, it looks like, okay, great. Gragas can separate somebody and create picks with the Akali and Renekton. Then you kind of just throw in this MF in there, and it doesn't really have significant amounts of synergy. And if they ever walk into a choke point versus you guys, you just dominate them with Varus ult, Kiana ult, Set ult. I mean, there's not really a great way for them to win team fights. And plus, they were picking this, and you guys had Tom Kench. So even if they were to isolate somebody, it seems like Tom's going to be there and able to save them on a.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I swear Vulcan should have died at least twice that game. Like once at the Rift Herald and then once bot lane on Dardoch's gank. I think level 6. But I mean, I guess he's just too good. I think Akali was just really useless right now. So I feel like I can't really do much. And then Renekton versus Varus, he can't really fight either. It seems like they all have to go into Varus ult, and they can't really team fight. Like we 4v5 them at Rift Herald, which is Varus ult, and I think Akali sacked like 3 waves bottom plus like 2 plates. And I think after that point, we just knew it was one.
I mean, picking a card on this patch should be reportable, honestly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, I saw a call and I thought they knew something that we didn't from scribs, but they did not. So
yeah, I mean,
so Finn, along these lines, I've been seeing more and more Renekton getting picked up in NA and in Korea. I'm not a big fan of Renekton right now. Oh. I think he's just like, I don't really understand his purpose because he's not going to scale well. And a lot of the junglers that people are playing right now don't have gank synergy or great gank synergy with Renekton. So what are your thoughts on Renekton as a champion in the current patch?
I mean, I kind of feel like Renekton has got one of these picks that top laners rely on when they don't know what to blind pick. But I just feel like the champion is really, really useless. Ever since they removed Shojin, it doesn't really offer much later on. And it kind of forces you to play really heavily for top side for like a medium-sized reward in a way. It doesn't really unlock the map in the same way maybe Pantheon would. Because Pantheon, when he gets ahead, he can easily snowball the map, right? With his ult,
global
run around. Yeah. Well, Renekton, he doesn't really like open that much except for like being a beefy dude that people can kite. So I don't know. I think the champion, it has its picks where it can be good into certain comps, but people are relying it way too much and picking it into really bad situations. So I hope to see it lose a bit more.
I'm just
the thing is, though, if you look at TSM all split long, though, it does look like at the moment, like one thing I'll give them credit for is it seems like they at least acknowledge where their problems are, because most of the time they do seem to like draft early game, I've noticed.
I mean, yes, and they continuously get early game leads. I don't think that's been...
No, that works. It's just the problem is beyond that. They've had massive issues, haven't they?
I mean, I don't even know if we want to go into the FlyQuest TSM game. Did Blaber Finn, did you guys watch that one? Because that was tragic.
I mean, they had a huge lead that game. They had like 4K, I think, and like 12 minutes or something.
Yes.
Actually, I was really surprised by the Taliyah Pantheon. When I saw it first picked, I was like, why would they pick Pantheon and Syndra? But...
Like, TSM has some serious questions to ask themselves. Because if you looked at those two rosters on paper, there's no way you would think the FlyQuest roster is better, but it actually is now, even over the whole split. Like, actually, that ties into one of the problems I have with the whole Cloud9 issue, which is kind of what you were saying earlier, Monty. I'm not hating on them. Like, they are the best team in NA right now. And obviously, Team Liquid, we haven't even seen what they're really going to be like with their real team. So I can't just say they're going to be better because they haven't shown me anything yet. But the real problem is this, is even when Team Liquid was the best, or years ago TSM was the best, unfortunately, to really feel satisfying if you're the best, you need like a pretty good second place team that you then beat. Like, for example, Cloud9 in the last years when Team Liquid would beat them, or TSM. Like, that's what really gives you your props, is like, I'm the dominant team in the region. The problem is at the moment, outside of Cloud9, we're literally talking, there's about 5 teams below them. None of them that are as good, but they're not terrible. They're all sort of like teams that feel like they should be like just mid to upper mid table, but they're all like in the battle for second place. Like at the moment, FlyQuest Immortals are the highest rated ones. I don't know anyone who believes those rosters are going to be like elite teams at the end of the year. Dignitas inexplicably was good and then lost their plot. TSM's had all these great early starts and hasn't done anything with it. It's like, who's the competition to beat at the moment? It's like, I'm not hating you. You can only beat whoever's in front of you, but there isn't really like a convincing contender at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of feel similar. Like, currently for practice, we versus almost even the top teams. I'm not gonna like say which teams, but we can play literally any champion and we'll probably win.
Who would you pick though if you had to pick like one of these teams I'm listing off? Who to use like the real second place team at the moment?
We haven't scrimmed TSM in a while because we just played them. But I
Could be
say
TSM.
them, I guess. Yeah, I mean,
I
TL,
heard they're good in scrims though, right? Are they better in scrims than actually?
we haven't scrimmed them in like 2
right,
or
fair
3
enough.
weeks because we played them this week.
You did just say that. It's true.
Yeah. TL is actually not bad in scrims. Their
Okay.
balling's actually probably the second best balling besides ours, I'd say, in scrims for sure.
Shame don't do any of that in the actual fucking game, but fair enough, whatever.
Yeah.
I think what's so interesting about TSM to me is like, I think their draft versus C9 was just a mistake. And I think that their draft versus FlyQuest, I understand what they were trying to do in terms of snowballing off of Taliyah and Pantheon. And like you're saying, okay, well, we have this strong early game. Let's try and force our global presence on the map. But the issue is when you can't close it and you're trying to play into late game Syndra, MF, and Ornn with a bunch of item upgrades, you're just not going to win those team fights. And I think we saw that because Dardoch couldn't even engage without just getting one shot, basically, the instant he appeared in these team fights. So what I don't understand is, yeah, TSM is having a good early game, but their inability to close, and they're playing very execution-heavy compositions. These are compositions that can be very good in terms of map dominance, but they require very perfect execution. And one thing with League of Legends right now is the window of getting that early and mid-game execution is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Because the late game, when everybody's ramped up, just happens so fast these days that these mid-game comps, I think, last year and this year, from what I've seen, are really hard to do because your window of time is so small to basically win the game with them or get an overwhelming lead.
I do think it's yeah, I agree with that, but I do think having early in comps and stacking Soul right now is pretty important, as well as Herald spawning twice, so you can almost always break mid tier 2 with second Herald and break the side turret or force them to match and take the plates that way. So I do think early game comps aren't bad, but I mean games are generally 35 minutes these days, so they do go pretty long.
I think it's important to find a balance in the comps. I see a lot of these comps pick like Taliyah, Pantheon, and then, I don't know, Renekton on top or some shit, where it's like, I mean, later on, they can't win team fights, and they're not strong enough side laners to be able to pressure sides effectively. That meaning that they kind of lose the win condition unless they get like super strong from Drakes or some shit. So I think teams need to realize that, I mean, it's nice having an early game, but you kind of need to have a weak side. It scales fine at the late games, you always have something to rely on. Because a lot of the teams are just failing to execute early and then just collapsing. I don't know.
What do you think about the way Korea's playing right now then? Because we've seen some really slow games comparatively. In terms of pacing, so much of Korea right now is achieve a minor lead, try and go and like scale to Dragon Soul, or even, you know, in some of these SKT Gen G games we saw, just sort of almost no kills, like no first blood until 18 minutes into the game, and then sort of just sitting on objectives and waiting for the Elder Dragon and Baron and all of these very late game objectives, which is that's always been Korea's way to play, which is slow and in control and low risk. I'm not I still don't think it's the best way to play right now because of how low time to kill is in general. So you can turn things around super quickly. If one person's out of position, they just die, and then the objective that you just spent 90 seconds is setting up for is now gone. Like, you can't fight it anymore. So have you guys noticed any differences between Korea's way of playing right now and what you guys have been in LEC and LCS?
I think it really shows in the draft, actually, because you can tell by Korean teams that how they draft, they really want to play in a certain style. And I'm just waiting for any teams to start first picking Ornn as well, because they should realize it's really broken in the region. Because if you just go mid and wait for 40 minutes every game, then this will win you the game. But I mean, Korea, they actually do prioritize Ornn really highly because this is how they want to play as well. And I think there are a lot of holes that you can exploit if you play against a good team. But I feel like both teams kind of agree on a handshake to just chill a bit, and then they just wait it out. But
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I personally don't like the Korean playstyle right now. I don't know if it's good or bad, but at least for jungle, they literally don't do anything. They kind of just full clear base every single game until they have like 120 CS at 14 minutes, like every game. And it's just like agreed upon by both junglers. I don't understand. And then it seems like if any objective, the one team doesn't have like 100% control, they really won't even contest it. And they just don't really want to fight unless they're in the perfect position. And I think that's why games go so long, because no one dies. Because no one's really contesting if they don't have the setup. So seems like there's AFK the entire game. I don't know.
So the clearing thing does play into, I think, LS's perception, where he came out this weekend. He was talking about scaling junglers versus having Lee Sin or Elise. And obviously, Blaber, you're a guy who has played exclusively Lee Sin, Elise, and Gragas this season, right?
He's a sinner.
He's So what is your perception on the value of these early game junglers? Because from the games that LS is watching and casting, I do understand why he is thinking the way he does. And I could even, if, like Finn's saying, in games that are going to go long and turn into, NA Rams in the mid lane, then that makes sense to maybe have a more scaling jungler. But C9 has been very effective.
C9 wins in 30 minutes. It doesn't matter,
exactly.
does it? Like, you don't need to scale if you just get all the kills in the first 10 minutes.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, we are able to always snowball off our early game leads, and win like the games pretty cleanly and get the first. Like, I think we got every first dragon or something. So if we're able to get all the objectives and turn the leads, turn like early game leads into wins, I don't really see a problem of playing more gank heavy or make more plays compared to farming more. But I assume if it's not working out, then you probably want to farm more as a jungler.
Here's the thing, Monty. I'll give you an exciting statement that no one's thought through, which is that if Cloud9 actually does end up being the best NA team, the difference is one of the reasons why people weren't hyped about Team Liquid last year going to Worlds, MSI, etc., is because unfortunately at the time, the way they played the game relative to what people thought the global meta was, they played like a late game scaling, like late game team fight style, and people thought that wasn't the meta in the game at the time. If Cloud9 today could go to MSI, I think they'd have a good chance against some of the Korean teams, actually. Like, I think some of these Korean teams would literally just sit back and be trying to play to a safe mid game, and some of them could get dusted off. Now, they obviously have sick laners, so they could maybe make up the disparity in that sense. There will always be that angle you have to shade in, but there would be a decent chance, actually. C9 stylistically, I think, would have a good matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been impressed with LCK's objective control, but it is very weird to see the differences in jungle pathing, especially early. A lot of times you just don't even see ganks. Like, you just see it, in this patch where we saw an increase to jungle experience, I guess the rationale is let's go and try and get more of that experience as much as we can and take advantage of the change that's happened. But it just seems so powerful to be out there ganking at levels 3 and 4 right now, doing, 3 camps and then going to gank or something like that. But I just watch I watch LCK and I'm like, these guys are just going like 4 or 5 camps and then basing instead of actually having presence on the map. Have you been researching any of this pathing, Blaber? Do you have thoughts on it?
I mean, I kind of just seen what they do, not really research, but I guess, but I think they're gonna farm even more on the new patch with jungle XP even higher. I do think farming on this patch is better than on 10.2 because you're not. If you farm a lot, you can actually contest the solo lane experience. So it actually feels a lot better, I'd say. But yeah, I'm not sure. I do think ganking and pressuring early isn't bad, or invading if you're stronger. But they're picking stuff like Diana jungle, and I mean, yeah, you can't invade on that champ.
I don't even know what SKT was doing in that game. I know we talked earlier, and I know you guys have checked out some of those matches, but that composition in game number 2, where they just got all their lanes shoved in, and then they lost the first dragon and the first herald because they had no map control because of the Diana. And I get that you're trying to shockwave and like moonfall and bring everybody in for an MF ult, but that just seems so optimistic, and it relies on the fact that you don't get all of your shit taken in the meantime. So I don't even like Diana, period, in this meta right now. I think she's just trash, frankly. But I think people have been playing her as some lane counter pick, but she doesn't. I haven't seen a game where she does a lot late, either in mid and especially in jungle.
Another thing you have to consider as well, unfortunately, when you watch LCK at the moment, is it's the same reason why everyone in bewildered Torrens always asks every year, like, but why doesn't NA just side lane all the time? Like, well, one of the obvious reasons why is because no one does it against them in their league. It effectively shows how good it is. Like, if there was a team that was just wrecking everyone doing that, they'd have to learn how to deal with it. In fact, they'd even have to match it sometimes, and therefore everyone would level up. So in the same way, in Korea, I think half of it has to just be that they both almost doing a gentleman's agreement to just farm the jungle. Like, if they actually had people there who aggressively pushed in, like I saw a comment, sadly, I forget who it was. It was like one of the Twitter analysts, where they were totally right. They said the crazy thing about watching LCK now is low-level LEC teams have a better idea of how to play from behind than LCK does. Because even the LEC teams know, like, sometimes that you're just in such a bad spot, you basically have to, you're going to either look like you're inting, you're going to look totally stupid, but it's the only way to get a chance to win the game still. So they at least go for it. Whereas LCK does that thing that actually I think is a killer, which is when you see a team that's like slightly behind, just almost agree to just be slightly behind the whole game and then play out a game and lose at the end in a really unsatisfying team fight. Like, who wants to wait 20 minutes for that? That's the least satisfying way to lose the game.
Yeah, Koreans can't appreciate a nice coin flip.
Exactly. Exactly. They're like, no, I've got my 40% chance to win here. I'm going to maintain that. Maybe work it up to 40.5% in the next 5 minutes. Like, no, just exactly. He's right. He knows. You just go, let's gamble, motherfucker.
Yeah. I was just gonna say some of the NA teams. That's like some of, I guess, the difference between how we judge if an NA team is better for us to scrim is like some of the teams just roll over and die when they're behind, like even some of the better teams. But I think like teams like TSM, TL, and even Dig, like they fight back when they're losing. So I think they're a bit better, yeah.
There we go.
I think it's
like Korean teams, yeah.
I think it's really hard though, because what Riot did was they created this additional win condition that requires you to fight, right? And that is getting the Dragon Soul, which is a huge bonus to the team. So you can create pressure for the first time really ever, like major pressure on the opposite side of the river, and you can control the timing around that as well. So I think because it's forcing fights, it makes it harder to recover from a deficit in general than it did previously, because at least before, if you were trying to prevent Baron, you only had to ward one side of the map. You only had to play that one side of the map. You could sort of dance around there forever and delay maybe long enough to get some sort of scaling advantage into the game. But when you're trying to get vision, because remember, vision is more limited than ever before as well. Like, you just have fewer vision options. So covering both sides is ridiculous, and would have been ridiculous regardless of what point of League of Legends history we've been in, but is even more ridiculous when you don't have that many tools to do it, right? So I'm not exactly, I don't know what the solution here is, because it does seem like the game is super snowbally right now.
Should we talk about a fun team? It's a team that people used to think was one of the greatest of all time. But all I'm going to say is this, Monty. You ready? Listen, everyone pay attention. Take your seats. Get your popcorn ready. Because this I'm about to say right now makes perfect sense and is straight fire. So here's the scenario, right, Monty? I'm not one to indulge in conspiracy theories, to speculate beyond my bounds, so I don't know what I'm talking about. So I have to literally treat it as though G2 Esports played a straight-up game against Schalke, and they really believed that what they drafted was the right choice, and the way they played the early game was the right choice, and these are the best players of all time in Europe, and they literally were doing their absolute best to win this game, and I can't in any way entertain that they were trolling or that they wanted to fuck a certain individual in the community who they didn't like over or anything else. I have to actually just literally take this game and put it as a black mark on their resumes forever, because this was one of the most disgraceful losses I've seen in a long time. Even taken outside the stupid drama element, like what a ridiculously like the Misfits game was fine. Like, that wasn't the end of the world. Misfits actually looks good. This Schalke game was an actual disgrace, though. Like, what the fuck is that? I even said it in my tweet, mate. After this week, like, forget all. I've even stopped complaining about Aphelios because I've realised if you just put caps on it, it's balanced as fuck.
I think this is just a side effect of G2's attitude, which is that they just don't give a fuck. And I think you just have to accept that that's who they are and that's who they're always going to be as players. And sometimes they're just going to int and troll in games. And that doesn't mean they're a bad team. It just means that they'll get upset sometimes by stupid opponents in best of ones in a regular season.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, one of the things we were all raving about the first few weeks is like, wow, they did this role swap again, and Perks is back to being the best mid laner. Now, it's true, he certainly had a few moments in some of these games where he messed up, but it's fucking the cap side of that role swap we were too quick to praise. Like, that has looked shit this week. That looked absolute garbage.
Finn, you play against G2.
Yeah.
Tell us what went on with G2 this week. You have any inside information? What was your observations? Have they been trying in scrims? Do they care?
I mean, this game against Misfits, I think they tried something too crazy in drafts. I'm not really a big fan of how they approach this draft. But then again, they did a lot of like weird mistakes in the game as well. For example, like, I remember like something Jankos did. He was like walking out of the brush and then ulting instead of his ulting from the Fog of War or some shit. And that cost them Nash. And I think they could win this game, but they were just, I don't know, making a lot of weird mistakes. And against Schalke, I think Schalke actually fought back quite hard. I think Schalke now looks a lot better than they did before, playing against them. And I think G2 just, I don't know, wouldn't say disrespected, but they just had a bad week, I guess. I don't think they will be bad coming to next week, but I think they got a bit of a reality check, I guess.
Like everyone who's a European analyst in League of Legends and was literally crying all off season. Oh, Bavoy, why have they signed that shit player Bavoy? Just take that fucking scoreboard, print it out and make it your wallpaper. Come on. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. That's actually ridiculous. You just styled on our best players. That's our region. Remember, we're always saying, oh, it's unfair. G2 has all the best players. Right, they have all the best players and Bavoy styling on them. What do you want?
I've rarely seen a feed at the professional level in lane like Caps in that game.
That's an ADC as well. Like, are you kidding me, mate? That's why I even said when he moved to that role, it's like, brother, you can be in a lot of roles because the thing is you're a genius. You can maybe get away with it, but like, you can't go like 0-5 on an ADC and then come back in the game. It's not happening, is it? It's like you've literally single-handedly lost this game, mate.
That's like what happens in silver solo queue games is you just get some AD carries just repeatedly feeding in the bottom lane for no reason, but very, very rarely do you see that kind of performance. I mean, sure, is AD Caps' role? No. They're trying something. I think it was inevitable that at one point in time versus seasoned AD carries, he was going to have a bad game, right? He doesn't know the ins and outs of this role at the professional level as basically anyone else in the league. But I think you look at the Schalke game, and they have, a relatively nice scaling composition here. This seems like a powerful late game. And to be fair, in this game, it was crazy. And weirdly, what impressed me was that people will say, oh, they lost to the worst team in the league. But if you actually watch this game, G2 played very impressively from behind in that they were threatening the base with their side pushes constantly with Perks. That
was too little too late, though. I know what you mean. Like, once they were in that scenario,
they did play it awesome, though. Like, to be that far behind in that scenario and play that well. It
should have been over already. That's true.
It should have been way over, way faster. And I was impressed, at least, with the way they were playing from behind. And I think that's what's scary about G2, and I think Finn could probably talk about playing against them, is that they're never really out of it. That's what's terrifying about them, is they are very good at finding other ways to win.
Yeah, I mean, I said this in an interview, but playing against G2, the game kind of starts when you get Nash. And then that's when you have to think and how you want to win. I remember our game against G2, there were like some Soraka picks that kind of made it hard for us as well. But we were really ahead and then we lost it. I think they're just really creative and really aware of what mistakes people usually do. And they're always really fast to punish them, which is, I mean, really impressive, but they also put themselves in really bad positions a lot. But I guess that's how they're comfortable playing, so.
Yeah, the problem with that, Monty, is like he almost nailed it at the end there. There's like two elements to that. One is like, well, they sure get a lot of practice being behind. It feels like it's almost like they just put themselves behind, like some Houdini trick. Like, right, I'm tied up now. I will be put into this upside down into this tank, and they will release sharks in 1 minute. And then when they get out, like, I'm alive. It's like, yeah, but you didn't actually have to do any of that. You could have just won the game immediately. Like, nope. Look, it's amazing what I did. I have a quick question for Blaber though, which is, so everyone was raving in the Misfits game, right, about the Razork performance on Echo Jungle. What do you think of Echo Jungle at the moment? Am I actually going to see that in any other regions? What do you think of this pick?
Echo actually just got nerfed on 10.3 to the jungle clear. I think they nerfed the passive damage by 50%. I was trying practice tool after I saw him play it, and I mean you can definitely feel it, but with the experience buff, it might not actually be bad. I might try it out. Because Echo's a champion that is really relying on items and levels. So maybe that with the new changes, maybe that's why Echo could be good. But I'm not too sure myself.
I mean, I
actually remember when Blaber was in Europe with camping for Worlds. I actually remember his Echo Jungle in solo kit was like tearing up every game. He was climbing so fast.
Yeah.
It was so good, it literally got the MVP of the league kicked out of his starting spot. Oh, sorry. My mistake.
How dependent, though, do you think Echo is on the setup? Because his W is obviously extremely strong as a stun and shield, but it takes so much time for the wind-up. Do you ever worry about ganking lanes, Blaber, as jungle Echo? Or, like, do you need some sort of hard CC? Because in this game, Misfits was playing with Set and Azir, who could, with both of their ults, they can actually push people in to the Echo stun, presumably. What do you look for in your laners when you're going to play Echo to be successful? Or you just clear until you team fight?
I mean, usually as a jungler, if you don't have CC, you would like your laners to have CC. Just in general, but it's not like, I guess it's not required. It's just nice to have for a team comp. And then for me, I think Echo, being good on Echo is really dependent on how well you place your Ws. Because you can sort of predict, like, if you're ganking, where they're going to run to, right? Or where they're going to flash to. And if you can cut off their path or predict their movement, then you can gank with just your W. But it's generally pretty hard without CC to actually hit it, since, I mean, you can always flash it.
How are you feeling about Echo Jungle there, Finn? Is this something you like in your team compositions?
I think it's useless. I think it requires too much farming, too much time, too much. I think the payout is not that as big as it should be when a champion needs this much time and resources.
Let's contrast.
You have to realize his jungle already plays like 2 champions anyway, so the chance will be a fine thing, basically.
Let's contrast this to something else that does take a lot of time, which is jungle Karthus. Right, we're seeing more and more.
Other Velas's favorites.
Would you say that that's going to be a more effective choice if you want to play some sort of scaling AP jungler these days? Because it seems relatively strong if you are left to your own devices.
I mean, you can go. You're the jungler.
I mean, I think Karthus just seems a bit more useful than Echo to me because he can actually impact the game. He also farms faster than Echo. So I think the champion is just a bit more useful, especially early, where I think Echo is actually useless until he gets like Runic.
Yeah, I mean, as a laner playing with Karthus, you need to be really aware of what he needs to be able to succeed. So you kind of need to adapt, and you can't really set up as many plays on your own as you would maybe want if you're playing like a strong laner that wants to dive a lot or that wants to move together with your jungler into enemy jungler camps or mid or whatever. You need to play way more for him and need to maybe help him with early, but I think Karthus also gives a lot when he gets his jungle clear item and level 6, because it also means you can take a lot of more aggressive all-ins in laners. While Echo, I don't know, feels too just weak to play around. I don't know. That's my opinion at least.
As a top laner, is it helpful to have a more roaming mid laner if there's going to be a Karthus jungle on your team?
I think if you have Karthus on your team, you kind of want a self-sufficient mid laner, a mid laner that doesn't need a lot of resources, a mid laner that can, I mean, either something like an Ornn mid maybe, or something like a Kiana that can just roam around. I think you can go both ways depending on what kind of player you want to be.
I've got a question for you here, Finn. Right. So when we were talking earlier about G2 and speculate, like, do they care? Are they just trolling in some of these games? Right. This split, in his 8 games, Wunder has played 3 games of Soraka and 1 game of Sona now. Like, do you actually think these are legit picks for a top team? Like, I always say this: if I put Wunder on a team now where he was like the main carry threat of the team, he surely would, first of all, never play these picks. And secondly, wouldn't he just look like a way better player? Like, are these legit picks for them to be doing, do you think?
I mean, the Soraka is extremely overtuned and should get nerfed ASAP, please.
Agreed.
So it's not that many other teams can pull it off, though, mate. I've noticed that.
I mean, other teams are really, I don't know, they don't understand it that well, I think, as G2. G2 is also like the first ones to play it, so they know it really well, obviously. The Sona, I'm not really sold on. I think it's more like a cheesy style that kind of relies a lot more on enemies making mistakes, while Soraka is just eventually making sure your whole team has a permanent Taric ult, so they can't take damage. So I think Soraka, I'm sure, is a powerful pick, but Sona, I'm not as convinced on.
G2 was playing Soraka before too, so like before these patches. So I'm assuming they just like it a lot too. And then also Soraka actually is stronger in lane, or much stronger in lane than Sona.
Yeah.
Plus, it's much harder to dive than a Sona. He's actually much more self-sufficient and can impact the map much earlier at 6 when he has ult. For the rest of his team. So I think Sona's just bad, but I don't know.
I just think it's when we. I don't know. I felt a little bit. I knew we were going to see more Sona, and I was curious about how the buffs, especially to the speed boost, were going to affect it when combined with Lichbane, which seems like it's going to be the first item that you want to pick up, just because if you do speed boost yourself, you can pop in super fast to get 1 auto off to proc your Lichbane, and so it does seem like it
does sound OP if you can pull it off.
Yeah, it seems like it's good in specific poke compositions that would be useful for, but I think a lot of the uses of Sona in particular are more limited and risky. I think Soraka right now is a win more champion that helps you snowball the lead. If your carries get behind, I think you really have a lot of problems with Soraka and trying to convert that into some sort of an advantage. So I think that they have their uses, but I think that a lot of the time their dominance is overstated simply because, and I think this has been true of win more champions throughout League of Legends history, is that they seem super oppressive because when you start winning, they just completely shit on you. And so the perception is that they are themselves super strong when they're mostly just kind of like a lead multiplier. And people tend to forget how useless they can be from behind.
Because this is my problem with the Soraka picks for G2 specifically. And obviously I can also now say this because they actually now lose games finally. Is, to me, the way they pulled that off, like I said, I think Wunder's such a sick player that in any other team, you would never be wasting picks like this on him. The reason they do it in this team, if I had to speculate, is exactly because they want to win the game through mid and bot. Like, that's the whole scenario. Yep. So essentially, they're just admitting that Caps isn't like some monster ADC yet. Because and if it was truly the super team that's supposed to be like last year, we can play through any lane and we just go with whatever's strong. Yeah, that's a great concept. If you can just switch up your draft according to what you want and you can go any direction, that's going to be so hard to predict. At the moment, the guy who always has to take the troll pick or the pick that sports you is always Wunder. Like, this guy would, if he was in the position that like Cabashard's in Vitality, he'd get every single strong pick in them at every game and he'd probably carry. So you're almost admitting that Caps is a shaky player if you do these comps, in my opinion, you know.
I think Wunder's just trying to make a statement that top lane is a useless role and needs a buff. I think
We did a good job of that Sona game.
Yeah. He's speaking for all of us, so.
Right, okay.
Well,
I see.
you've been playing a large amount of very strong top lane champions like Aatrox and Set have been your two most plays. You've thrown a little like Ornn and Aurelia in there, but it seems like Rogue has you have a very different philosophy about top lane in that you're playing split pushers or like big team fight champions that are going to be carries, right? What is Rogue's thoughts right now about how to play the top lane champion pool?
I think just securing a strong pick that doesn't need too much attention and will always be useful. I think this is kind of how we want to play with top 10 champions. A champion you can play for and play away from is always the most valuable, I think, because it allows us to be way more flexible in how we want to play the game.
What do you guys think about Set right now? Because both of you might play Set. We've seen some Set jungle in LCS with Dardoch in a game that...
It's ridiculous how many positions it can flex to. That's already a worry inside with any
also
fucking
mid.
new champion in it.
That was
exactly.
it was a G2 thing, though, to put it mid. I wouldn't say
Sure.
that it's a normal mid flex pick. I just think it was a flex pick within that specific team composition. So that was sort of an edge case. But with Set right now, clearly incredibly strong, not very difficult to play. When do you like playing Set, Finn? What matchups do you enjoy? Where do you want to use him in terms of team compositions? You've actually lost both your Set games.
Yes,
so
yes. I'm well aware. I think what I hate seeing is when people like first pick Sets on blue side or like 1-2 on red side, because I think the champion doesn't... It's not a champion you want to pick early because it's not a champion that will win you the game. It's a champion that will do his job, like no matter what happens, kind of. So I think Set is more properly used as a later on pick when you just want to secure a solid champion for your top laner, like a 4-5 on blue side or 4 on red side, and you want to counter pick mid. I think what the mistakes a lot of teams are using is they're just picking him because they think it's broken, but then it doesn't really do much. I think the champion is for sure strong, but I think people have a way higher opinion of him than they should have.
do you ever play Set in the jungle, Blaber?
I played it a bit, like when it first came out, in solo queue, but Set jungle just doesn't seem too good to me. You don't really farm super fast. You don't really have great ganks, which are like, important things for a jungler.
Well, to you, not to Korean junglers.
Oh, okay, my bad. I think Set in general, I think it seems like a pretty strong champion. But I think it really depends on what the enemy team comp is, like if Set can impact it or not, if he can like ult a tank in or something, or like how useful he can be. I think depends on the enemy team comp.
Yeah, I think people have overrated. Like, I know with every new champion, like most of them are overtuned, or they have like aspects where people
Well, they
just
wanna
start
sell
figuring
them.
stuff out, and immediately it looks OP. I will say, like, as a jungle champion, it doesn't seem overpowered. Like, it's just that if you get to a point where it's still fine in the game and you're in a team fight, yeah, it's going to look really unfair when he does like the ult. It's going to be like, oh, what the hell? Like, how am I supposed to play versus that? It's like, you had the rest of the game before that. It wasn't like it was just OP from level 1, was it? Come on, give me a break. Like, there's enough OP shit we really need to complain about. We don't have to complain about that, do we? Just another champion.
I think Aphelios is the only one that I think is egregiously overtuned. If we look at the other ones,
I've
that have come
almost
out
started
recently,
enjoying it, Monty. I just start taking it like some sort of like let's see what's going to happen now. Fuck, didn't expect that ult. This
just
is
one
fun.
ult kills,
Yeah, exactly.
kills the entire team.
Some mental ones I've seen.
Well, yeah, it's quite broken. I do agree. I mean, 80 carries is broken overall, like both things.
Agreed.
And both Aphelios and Senna, I think Senna got a bit nerfed now, thankfully, but Aphelios is still a monstrosity that shouldn't have happened.
I mean, I still think Senna is much more of an edge case and like has been overused.
That's lost a lot of games on stage, put it that way. That's the thing. Maybe in solo queue or scrims it's OP, but like on stage, that champion has lost a lot of games. It didn't seem that OP to me.
She's great in lane, great for poke. I just don't like her late game. I think her actual objective and turret pressure is pretty garbage. And she can't bust tanks for shit. So if you have a tank that gets too big on the other team, then I'm not sure you're going to be able to do much to that unless, I think if you're playing a poke composition against a squish your comp and you can bully them out and win a poke battle where you have the Senna heals, then it's good. But overall, I do think it's a little bit... She's strong, but perhaps overplayed a little bit.
By the way, I've got some info for you that I'd actually like to get Finn's take on this, because last week I did an episode of Elitist United, that show I do with Veteran, just about LEC. And on it, our guest one of them was Febervin, actually, from Misfits. And this is obviously before this week where they won these games and even beat G2. And what's funny is on this show, because he has actually a very interesting personality, if people don't know Febervin much. He is actually like supernaturally self-confident person. Some people would say cocky. Again, that's all in the eye of the beholder. It's an entirely subjective decision. I'd say quite cocky myself personally, but whatever. I said some people. Now, here's the thing. He literally was saying about how he wasn't impressed by most of the other teams. In fact, most of the mid laners even he didn't think were that good. He even said actually that Mickey is better than Larson. So, yikes. We'll just put that one out there for a second. That existed. He said that. And then he also said how he was going to be the only person to challenge Perks and how they could go against G2, etc. And he actually did it. Like, I've got to give him credit. Like, it actually happened. So what do you think of this Misfits team? Because coming in, a lot of people did have them as like the worst roster, or the team that's like a joke and they're going to be the worst overall. But they've had this crazy win streak. So what are your thoughts on Misfits, Finn?
I think their top side is really, really good, actually. Dan and Feby, I think, are both pretty good players. Razork seems to play well with Feby as well. And he kind of found his place now finally after the first weeks where he was a bit shaky. As for how good as a team they really are, it's really hard to say. I mean, next week we play them, so I guess we'll have to see for ourselves. I don't know. But they seem good, but I'm not sure how good.
I think that they've had a really good... I was very underwhelmed by them in week 1, and we talked a little bit about this last week, where I thought Febervin looked super off, and I think we did get some more information about how he was trying to integrate with the team from Amazing that made it make sense. But he's just been getting better. I think the whole team has been getting better week to week, but he finally seems like he is back to his old form. And I think we can joke about the Jungle Echo, but I think Razork has actually been extremely good. So
he looks like the most improved player in LEC from the beginning to now, basically.
Yeah,
I've been impressed generally. Have you noticed a big improvement in Misfits' performance in your potential scrimming against them, or have you been scrimming them, Finn?
Yeah, I mean, I remember week 1 we played them and they kind of just rolled over. They were like really shaking on stage, I think. But now they seem to be a lot more comfortable, especially Razork. And I think recently he's been playing a lot better than he did in the beginning. So I guess he has finally got comfortable. And yeah.
What do you think, though, Finn, about your player Larson, your mid laner? Because a lot of people said, like, if this team's going to be the best, going to have a chance to win LEC, like, he has to be one of the best mid laners. Obviously, mid lane is the pivotal role of Europe. You only basically win LEC if you've got a sick mid laner. Now, here's what's confusing, right? Is he looked really good as like a rookie last year, but this year there's all these statements going on. Like, he's saying he's better than Bjergsen, but then what even is Bjergsen right now? So I'm trying to like all the numbers and equations going across. Then I'm being told by Febervin, who's pretty good, that he's not as good as Mickey, who everyone memed on and said was trash. It's like, again, the equations are just flat. Give me some insight here. How good actually is Larson at the moment?
I mean, Larson is fucking insane. Like, this guy is completely bonkers good. I think what he does is really, really smart. He plays very calculated, and he doesn't... I mean, he offers a lot to the team in all ways. I don't know what Feby is saying. It doesn't make sense to me, but maybe he knows something I don't.
I'll tell you why. I'll give you my speculation. Because one thing, if you're an interviewer, that you have to learn to do is sort of be able to empathize with the person you're interviewing and you have to basically understand what they mean, even if they can't explain it. I would suggest it's like this. I think Febervin's one of those players where, like, if you use the term calculated, if he thinks you play too safe, then I think he thinks you're a pussy, basically, and he thinks you're like, this guy doesn't have any balls or whatever. So believe it or not, I think the reason why I'm bringing that up is because think of the contrast. Like, Mickey clearly isn't like a world-class mid laner, but I'll give credit to Mickey. If he is going to go into a scrap and he's going to go fucking balls deep. So as a result, like, maybe Febervin just respects that on some weird level. So I think his logic was that like Mickey could pop off and have a big high ceiling game or something, even though I will say it doesn't happen that often, but whatever. I sort of vaguely got what he means. I obviously think it's nonsense. My favourite player is literally a guy who farms 700 minions, so what do I care about fighting?
I mean, it's a bit weird he said that, considering Larson solo killed him twice in our game.
Okay, there we go.
I don't really know what he means when he says Larson is like a passive player or whatever, but I mean, exactly. Everyone is allowed to have their own opinion, and I respect it.
What does that
You
even
do?
mean? He goes, everyone's allowed their own opinion. I respect it, even though it's completely wrong. And I don't even understand why I'd have that opinion. All right, fair enough. Okay. It's a very Swedish way to just basically say you're full of shit, isn't it? Like,
See, I have the exact opposite take, which is everyone has their opinions and I don't respect them. So
you don't even have to. You're not obliged.
I instantly discard and ignore them. That's okay. I mean, I think Larson has mechanically impressed me more than anything else. I think that when I watch him in some of these team fights or I watch him in skirmishes, he is incredibly good mechanically and at his decision making. So for me, he's a player that is one of the most exciting, I would say, new-ish players to watch in the league. And yeah, I don't really. I think there's a lot of room for growth in the mid lane in general in the LEC right now, which I would love to hear your take on, because it seems like when we talk about European mid laners, the narrative throughout League of Legends history has always been, oh, European mid's so strong, that's why they're always imported over to NA. But this season, it seems like, especially because we did see the Perkz cap switch, and Perkz has been great, but obviously there's still some catching up to do after playing for a year as an AD carry. And at least Febiven's starting a little bit on the weaker side and now coming back into form. It seems like there's a lot of question marks about where we even rank EU mids overall, and which of these mids is actually like elite tier, because it seems like there's Perkz and then a bunch of people who are fighting for that sort of second place position.
Problem is you've got a whole bunch of people who don't have the name value yet. So I actually think if you just look at raw performance, the overall level's pretty good, actually. It's better than last year, in my opinion, for mid lane. And also you've got to remember, like, Vitality doesn't have their actual mid, like Millicea or whatever his name is, like, he still isn't there. So in theory, it should be even better. But I would agree, like, if you want to talk about, like, the idea of, like, again, taking it historically, like, the idea of an EU mid is no matter what the level of Europe is, you're supposed to be able to take that player and put him against everyone who isn't basically called Faker Rookie, and then he might actually be better. That was always the premise in League of Legends history. If I look right now, there's not many that I would put in that category. Like, Perkz is one, maybe Febiven, but then I don't think his team would even be good enough. I personally don't think they'll be going to Worlds or any of those tournaments. I think they'll drop off and be like mid-table. So we'll see on that one. Nukeduck's always good, but I've always personally had my issues. I always feel like he doesn't quite go to the elite level. Larson, as we said here, he's pretty good. I personally think Larson's probably still like a split or two away. I think he'll be like MVP level next year, if you ask me. Beyond that, it's like, here's the problem. The floor level is pretty good. Like, even the worst mids, I think, are pretty solid. But I would agree. I don't think there's that. It's not like in the past when you could go like when you went like top 4 mids in Europe for even a few years back, you were talking like people who were going to be like first ballot Hall of Famers. Like, it was a really crazy like name value list. I'd say it isn't that crazy now. What are your thoughts, Finn? You obviously play in the league all the time.
I mean, I think the one name you miss is Humanoid. I think this guy's really
He's a
good.
pretty good player, but would you put him elite tier? A lot of people, I guess, have raved about him.
It's hard to say. Like, it's hard for me to judge mid laners. I just know what I feel playing against them. But I think Humanoid seems like a really strong player. He does a lot of like mistakes, but something.
He has pretty sick mechanics. I'll give him that.
Some of the things he does is really, really good, and he seems to like know how to make himself really useful in a lot of ways. But what was the question?
Who are the good EU mids? Because we're having
who are
trouble.
the elite mid?
I mean, there's like Larson, and then the rest. I don't know.
Is there though?
All right.
I mean, he's Swedish, obviously, so of course he's talented.
I think with Mad Lions, though, Humanoid's been good, and obviously Mad Lions is surging now, but I've been really impressed with Karzi's play overall, even though a lot of his good games have come on Aphelios, which is pretty busted, so I do have to add that level of caveat in there, but he's had some good games on other champs as well. And even though Shadow has been more of a crapshoot, I think we've seen an extremely high ceiling on both Karzi and
He's
Shadow.
had some good teams for sure.
Like, I really like both of these guys, and I feel like these guys are going to develop really fast this season.
Mad Lions is actually the team where, I mean, I guess people are going to say it's Misfits now, but I don't actually think Misfits made those choices. I think actually they were just in a bad spot at the end of the offseason. They picked them up, and some of them have worked out, in fact, better than even any of us could have thought. The difference is, Mad Lions, as far as I know, picked these players to sign quite early in the offseason. And these are mostly players, except Humanoid, who were obviously playing in the challenger scene. And Humanoid himself was only a rookie last year. Just he was one of the more promising rookies. So I actually have to say, like, thus far, I know they haven't yet like got a top placing, and obviously there's a lot of flux in the standings in LEC. But I think Mad Lions, like actual like scouting and front office and that sort of thing, the coaches now look like they did a great job putting this team together. To me, in fact, it's a team where, as we're talking about here, they've already looked good, but you can see potential with some of the players. Like some of these players, one day could be some of them. It's like Kazi probably could be the best ADC.
Shadow as well, I think, is going to be very good.
Shadow seems like he's a decent enough player. Even the ones that are the other players definitely do their job. So what a great job whoever put this team together did.
Blabber, have you have a chance to watch any of Shadow's games? Because he reminds me a lot of you as a player.
I briefly watched their Fnatic game where he played really well in Lee. I watched a bit of that game. I mean, I also saw like some of his games where he didn't play as well. He seems like he could be super good, but I haven't watched too much of him to really be able to judge. For his play, I saw him pop off for Fnatic, so.
Do you have any LEC players, any LEC junglers that you do think are impressive or like really stand out to you? Besides Jankos, you can't say Jankos.
I mean, I think Jankos is the only player I really watched. When I was playing in EU solo queue, I thought Inspire was pretty good. But besides that, I don't really watch EU junglers too much. Besides Jankos, I'd say.
Here's the thing, mate. That's fine, right? Like if I asked Finn here, like, what do you think of any top laners? He could just give me that Gandhi answer. He'd go, I think that would be a fine idea, because like, who gives a fuck? Like there's just imports. That's it. I know you're going to be like, what about Licorice? I was like, yeah, what about him? I've been waiting like 3 years for that guy to be really good. But whatever, put that on one side. Here's the difference, though, Blabber, is, listen, I'll take the hit about EU mids. We haven't got that many like super class, world class players, etc. Right now, EU jungle are murk NA, mate. We have got the deepest pool. Like, Finn, what do you think on this? Come on, man. We have got some fucking bangers in Europe in the jungle now.
Yeah.
Look how far we go. Jankos, like obviously inspired from your team. Xerxes. Who else have we got? I even think, obviously, self-made. Like, I know people are going to think it's a meme still, but Cadril is not a meme, mate.
Well,
like,
Razork is actually getting better and better. Like, Razork and Shadow are both getting better.
Almost all of them. Put it this way. Like, those players that I do think are a bit overrated, like Trick, etc., they're the worst. They're actually at the bottom of the pile. That's how good the jungle stack is in Europe.
Okay. So one thing we usually do on Sundays, on our off day, is we sit together, the team, and we sit and watch NA. And we just, like 50% of this time, it's just inspired flaming all the NA junglers and calling them super boosted.
Everyone's got to have hobbies, you know, Finn.
Well, I mean, we exist in a world where, at least in LCS, you could make a pretty legitimate argument at this point in time that Santorin is the second best jungler in NA.
Wouldn't even be that ridiculous, mate. That's how bad the situation is.
Like, can we think about the world that we're in League of Legends where Santorin is actually entering the conversation for best, like potentially best or second best LCS jungler?
If you want, here's the statement right now, Blabber, that shows how fucking god awful the jungle position is in NA. Right? So everyone laughed at that Golden Guardians team. I'm not even joking. Closer might actually be the second best jungler.
Yeah, Closer's good.
Blabber here. And he plays for the worst team in theory. That guy's a banger.
Pretty good.
He's a banger, isn't he?
I definitely agree. I don't think NA junglers are very strong right now. Just in general, I don't feel like they're very good. Personally, from playing against them, or like compared to before, I don't know. Maybe I improved, but I do think Closer's pretty good. And he definitely impressed me when he came here.
Because it's actually underwhelming. Because here's the sad thing: is if you actually look at the names that play jungle in NA, this should be one of the best splits ever. Like you've still got the like legends, Meteos, Smithy. You've got Svenskeren still in the league. I'm looking at Santorin still there. Dardoch, obviously, everyone wanted to see him in a really good team again. You've come into your team now. Actually, Greg looked half decent for the first few weeks for Dignitas. This actually should be a straight fire split. But I actually feel like most of those names aren't living up to their name value. Like the legendary players haven't looked as good. I think most of them have been crap.
I think the problem with Dardoch is he's like Cinderella right now, which is that for the start of the game, right? Dardoch is a lot like Cinderella in that he's amazing. He's beautiful. All the laners want to dance with him at the start of the game. But as soon as the clock hits 20 minutes, he had a great evening, but then at the end, the carriage just turns back into a pumpkin. He goes back into rags, and nobody can find him, right? So I think that is a fair analogy of Dardoch's performance at the moment. And outside of that brief window of time, there's not really much to like about his play, because any advantages that he had, anything beautiful that he does, just goes to shit in the end.
I mean, you can see that if this was a solo queue game, he'd have won the game already. But the problem is, it's actually a team game where the other team can do coordinated moves and come back in the game. It's actually hard. You have to know how to do the late game.
I mean, to be fair, he does kind of int in the late game sometime.
Right, come on, Blaber. Just because this guy's obviously your boy and he, like, you know, low key, you play the same way, but it's just working for you right now. Come on, give us some actual thoughts on Dardoch. Come on.
I mean, I can kind of relate. I mean, I had similar problems. I'd say last split. When I was playing LCS, like if I was playing LCS where I would struggle mid late, I do think Dardoch's pretty good mechanically. His early game seems really strong, but I do agree. It seems like he's struggling a bit in the later stages.
Yes, he turns into a pumpkin.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why.
Or a ward.
Say why. It could be like it could be maybe team problems, but I doubt it. But I'm not too sure on why he's struggling.
Really, are we actually wondering if there are team problems with TSM junglers? Like, how many fucking years does this have to go on? How many years do we have to have TSM jungler jokes? Why is it never fixed? How are we still here 6-7 years later with the same bullshit?
I don't know what to tell you. The only person still staying is Bjergsen. I mean, everything I've heard about Bjergsen from all his old teammates, like Sven, Dennis, they've all said like Bjergsen is really insane and easy to work with. So I'm not sure why, because it doesn't seem like he's the problem from talking to his old teammates.
I've got a question for you then. So similar time as when you came into LCS is when we got Wigley, basically. You know, you were maybe like a few games in the split before that. But last year, this is another player where the story of last year has totally not come into 2020. Like in the spring, maybe like up and down. In the summer, he looked really good. That's why CLG was doing so well. Everyone thought they'd go to Worlds. Seems like it's been a nightmare, and that team CLG generally has been pretty fucking bad. Even though I have to say, I thought their roster looked awesome coming into this year. Why is this team so bad? Because it's not like they're just losing games, Blaber. Like they lose games that look really, really embarrassing.
I actually have no clue. When I saw the roster from, like, obviously they got third last split, didn't make Worlds, but regular season they were third, and I thought their team was actually an upgrade. I thought Crown would be a really good pickup for them.
He's a monster.
But I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think Wigley's been not playing really great at all compared to his performances last year. I mean, I don't know why. I feel like there's not much I really know, and I know they wanted like Smoothie for a better late game or shot calling compared to a strong early
Theory
game.
makes sense, yeah.
That Biofrost wants, but it doesn't seem like they have that either. So it just seems like they're having a rough time.
I think Crown, having watched his career, it just kind of alternates year to year whether
he has the craziest
or
switch, doesn't he? Like normally you just gradually get better or worse. This guy just flips the switch and becomes terrible, doesn't he?
He's either really good or really bad. I don't know what triggers that within him. It is I don't think I've ever seen another pro player basically just be shit or good. And it's not even game to game. It's
you know what's even
it's
sad?
like year to year.
This is where, Monty, like life is just stranger than fiction. Because the real problem with Crown, I could describe it in one sentence. He becomes a shadow of his former self. How's that even real? That's real life. He actually was called Shadow years ago when he was already in Brazil. That's actually unreal. That can even be a legit statement. This is a matrix.
I don't know what's going on, because I look at this meta too and I think, well, there's some kind of, obviously not the Malzahar, but there's some Crown classics here. Like Victor is getting played a little bit more these days around the world. You would think that he would be able just to go back to some comfort picks and do well, but it almost seems like it's his mentality, because he takes such risky flashes in games. He just all-ins at like level 3 and then loses the game for his team.
The craziest thing is as well. Yeah, go on. Of course.
Yeah, a lot of his deaths just seem so random. Like his first Nico death on the Casio game for CGS. I mean, there's no way he doesn't know Nautilus is there. It just goes in anyways, hoping he dodges the Casio ult.
Yeah, it just seems like he's making hero plays, and I don't know. That's a very weird mentality issue to fix, but luckily they have Thorin's favorite mental coach, Weldon, to fix these problems.
He's got the challenge of a lifetime now, mate. Down 1-7. So let's see how you do it. Let's hear that Miracle on Ice speech 50 times and see if it works. I'm somewhat skeptical. I have to say, by the way, after this year, Song, your career has to be done in LCS after this, bro. How many teams are you going to do this with? You had the one split that was good. That was it. Now every team's just down. Like, listen, I don't want to hit on coaches, but I'm going to have to. So I'm just going to say, after you take that many different teams and fail with them, that's it for you. You know, these are different players. You're the only connecting thread.
Well, I think it's interesting that Weldon, the head coach of this team, went from. You know what? I don't even blame CLG. Like I honestly can't fault them for a lot of the roster moves that they made, and it's impossible to know whether Crown is going to be good or bad.
No, these looked like upgrades, like Blaber said. Like these are looked at worst like side grades, and actually, if you looked at what they wanted as a team, I agree. It looked like upgrades. Like even the smoothie pickup. The logic was this guy's always been hailed as a good shot caller. He apparently they just claim in TSM that it didn't work. So you think, hey, I'll take a gamble, bring him into my team, upgrade that. We're even better now. We're the second best team in NA or something. Just it turned out bizarrely everything's gone wrong and they're the absolute worst team, which is actually crazy. I can't believe it still.
Yeah, I think it's just unfortunate. Sometimes you just get anti-synergy, and unfortunately there's not a lot of time to test synergy during the off season to figure out what exactly is going to work, because there's so many, everything moves so fast, there's so many moving parts. You kind of just have to make your evaluation on paper and then say a prayer that the synergy is going to come together if you're trying to assemble a lot of new players into your team. So sometimes you just end up with the shit end of the stick, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think their solos haven't been performing to like what they thought it would be with the pickups. Like I think Rune also was performing a lot better last year than this year too. So, I mean, and obviously Crown I don't think has been playing very well. So as a jungler, I feel like it's hard for Wiggly to play too. But I'm not quite sure what's going on. It just seems like they're playing worse than when they were playing when they got picked up.
All right, I think we should take a break and we'll do the C9 roundup real quick. People can have a chance to go to the bathroom, get a drink, and then we'll be back in just a few, so you can enjoy the roundup in the meantime.
Howdy there, buckaroos and buckarettes. Welcome to another edition of the Cloud9 Roundup, your source for Cloud9 news here on the 9 Summoning Insight presented by AT&T. First up, we have to give a big congratulations to our boy Blaber. Now, Blaber won the MasterCard Player of the Week this week, beating out everyone else in the league and becoming the second Cloud9 player to win that award after Sven did it the week prior. Now, as you know, Cloud9's record after this week is currently, and you have to look at the screen for this one because it's going to appear hovering over my hand. Now, I don't know what their record is because they haven't played Evil Geniuses yet while I'm making this recording, but by the time you see it, we'll know exactly how good they are. Hopefully 8-0 and undefeated. If not, I'm sure it'll be their only loss of the season. Speaking of wins, Cloud9 Academy's future is looking a little bit brighter. They beat Evil Geniuses Academy and TSM Academy this week to end up 4-4 so far in the Academy Spring Split. You might not be watching some of the other esports that Cloud9 participates in, but maybe you should be checking out Rocket League this season. It's the second week of competition and their viewership's been mighty good if I do say so myself. Unfortunately, Cloud9's Rocket League team did lose in a nail-biter 2-3 to Rogue, and they are now 0-2 on this season. Hopefully, Squishy Muffins and the boys can turn things around. Cloud9 Tens, now he may not be part of the official Cloud9 CSGO team any longer, but he is still participating in some qualifiers with his new posse. Tens is a streamer, and he might well go ahead and make the ESL 1 Rio as he has advanced to the minor closed qualifier. So good luck to Tens and his new crew. Much like in Rocket League, we have some more bad news for Cloud9 fans this week. In World of Warcraft, C9's team fell 0-2 to Camera Shake Dead and have been officially eliminated from the Method Mayhem kickoff. Bad times for World of Warcraft, and some bad times for Cloud9's very famous Smash player Mango. He has been kicked out of the Smash Summit 9 by Plup, and so he will end his tournament run there. Best of luck to Mango in some of his future competitions. It's a short one this week here on the Cloud9 Roundup, but I hope you enjoyed, and we'll be getting right back to Thorin and regular MonteCristo in just a few.
All right, we're back with the rest of this show. And you know what that means? It's time to give you Puma swag. So, if you would like to win a Puma gift card, then you must be from NA and over 18 years old. But you also must use hashtag Puma and the names of players you want us to talk about with Blaber and Finn. So we're not going to do teams. We're going to do specific players. Hashtag Puma and player names. And we'll look and we'll see if you are going to choose one of these. Okay. Well, I guess we do have to talk about Forgiven. I guess we're just going to start there. We haven't actually had a conversation about that yet. And we definitely need to. So besides Forgiven, we'll get some other people to talk about that you want Finn and you want Blaber to talk about. Okay, while I look at this, let's talk about Forgiven. Thorin, what's your take on what happened with Forgiven?
Right, the thing is, because I was off doing this CSGO event, I actually haven't had a chance to put a video out, but I will put out a lengthy video on this topic. So the brief sort of Cliff Notes version I'll give now goes like this. So because I know people inside his team and indeed Forgiven himself, basically what people saw publicly was he just came out and he basically made this weird statement where he made this statement where he implied that it was a mutual decision for him to no longer play. Now, anyone who knows my feelings about mutual breakups know they don't exist. That's just one side lying that they had a choice to something they had no choice in. So similarly, I would imply same situation here. He was basically benched and he's just lied and said it was mutual, and that, you know, because he also wasn't happy with the team, somehow in his mind, some fucked up sense, that makes it mutual when they then bench him. And for whatever reason, he hasn't decided to just basically sort of air his dirty laundry and flame the whole team. Now, I heard there was some issues in the team and things he didn't like. My problem is this. This is one area where I have a massive parting with Forgiven and always have on certain principles of life, which is when I've heard a lot of the stories over the years in all the teams Forgiven's been in of teammates who were bad or didn't practice the game enough or didn't have a winner's mentality. I'm with him on all those things. I can buy the idea that could be frustrating or that could bring your game down or you didn't look as bad as you did in this match, but this teammate wasn't doing something. The one area I can never fuck with Forgiven, and I've never been on his side on this area, is when you basically just quit. And you're just like, right, well, because this person is playing like an idiot or is bad, I can then just say, doesn't matter if I lose this game. Or I can even literally quit the team and say, I'm not going to play anymore. Or I can say, you know what, this shouldn't even count against my record. These aren't real games. That is whack. I actually just think that is whack. No matter what, whatever I do, whatever I agree to do, especially if I'm doing something like be a pro player, I would play every game out. At the end, I might write a tell-all book. I might tell everyone this guy was an asshole, whatever. But I'll play out my contract. I'll do my part of it because that's the problem. I hate when people take someone else's failure and use it as an excuse to be like, well, because he didn't do it properly, I don't have to. It's like, well, that just reflects badly on you, mate. The whole point of having ideals and principles as a person is they represent you, not what the other person did. That's like a little kid's mentality of well, if he's going to do it, then I'm going to. It's like, no, then you're as bad as him. The point is, in this scenario, Forgiven probably picked the stupidest way to go about this because he's made himself, first of all, look cocked as though he agreed to do this, which he clearly didn't. And then secondly, he's made himself look stupid because now everyone thinks he's just a little bitch who just just pieced out because he was losing. Like, if it had really been the case that he was one of the better players in the team, seemed like it, and there was a lot of flaws in the team, and there were massive issues, and they wouldn't upgrade players, play out the end of the split, let the record be what it is. The people who are legit are going to know if you were legit anyway, and people then won't have all these other areas which are obvious drama magnets, like you seem to have quit the team, you did it in a way that wasn't very well messaged. And then thirdly, now anyone who hates on you, especially because of that G2 win, can just laugh in your face now, and your career ends in probably the most whack way possible. So I don't have some particular problem with him, like on like an overall level, but it's just an exacerbated version of all the problems I think he's had in his career that all come to a head now. And then he's also done a terrible job with the PR, but unfortunately that was always his weakest suit element anyway, as it were.
I mean, I think I really love Forgiven as well. I just think that when we're talking about, I understand his frustration, but we're already 4 weeks in out of 9 weeks. His team isn't going to make playoffs. So literally you're almost halfway through by the time this week starts. Let's say a third of the way through, because he quit after week 3, but somewhere before week 4. Why not just see it out? Everybody knows spring split doesn't matter. So it's not that big of a deal. The stakes are low, and I understand that he has standards and principles that he expects his teammates to adhere to. That's always been him. That's been true. But it really, 9 weeks of your life, what is that, man? Like, it's not that much time. You're coming back after a long break. Just show up as best as you can in this bad situation that everyone knows is bad, right? It's not like anybody's confused about this. Instead of just, I don't know, giving up. It just seems like a very unfortunate decision, very short-sighted decision when the spring split really isn't long, and it's not like you're going to playoffs or MSI anyway, right?
Yeah, because there's another problem I have with it, right, is one of the things that a detractor will obviously say is like, wow, look at the size of this guy's ego, what he thinks he's just that much better than his teammates. Well, they're not wrong for giving. They are right. Your ego is obviously massive. If you can't just play a few more weeks of losing LEC League of Legends while getting paid a decent salary and just at the end say they weren't good. Like, this is the problem that he has, right? He presents it like some nightmare scenario to play the game. It's not like your teammates are tasering you while they play you, and like people doing stuff like just putting tax on you. Say, what the hell? Bloody hell! Like, that would be unacceptable condition. You just have to sit in a chair and lose the game narrowly, as in the past at least. The jungler inted in the middle and it did nothing. Like,
to be fair,
that's not the end of the world, is it? Come on.
There are 100 million League of Legends players, and at least at any given point, 50 million of them are sitting in a chair losing a game of League of Legends. You know. Exactly. It is a cruel punishment, but it's not an unusual one. Let's put it that way.
Plus, as a final thing to say on this, because I want to get these guys' thoughts actually, I will just say this as well. The angle I also can't fuck with is the notion that like, oh, but I did this because I'm a winner. Nah, bro, you just showed you aren't a winner. You can only win when everything's perfect. You can only win when it's all the teammates you like, playing just the way you like, with no things that put you off at all. That's not a winner. A winner is someone who comes in. I tell you what a winner is like Faker in season 7, when his team had no business doing anything and he just put them all on his back. Garbage players that he had to literally play Galio every fucking playoff game to have a chance to make them win, because he had to affect the entire map and carry the whole motherfucker. And he just did it anyway and said, get on my back, we're going to the finals. And then in the final, got completely humiliated because he played a way better team and was crying his eyes out. But you know what? He actually put himself in that position to go all the way to the finals. He could have just bowed out in a 5-game series in the quarters and gone, well, my teammates sucked. I'm still Faker. They suck. It's not on me, right? It's not my fault. No, he did everything he could. Think of all the legendary players. Soaz was in one of the worst teams last year. He was in a team that was bottom of the league. A legendary player, one of the goats of the game. He didn't just quit. He didn't just go, this is bullshit, or flame everyone publicly. No one even knows who the bad players in that team are because none of them came out. So loads of great players have been in bad teams. Some of them have even been in nightmare teams. It's so rare. How many times on the top of your head, Monty? How many times has anyone ever just quit during a split? I don't think it's ever happened, has it? Maybe once or twice ever. I'm struggling to think of examples even in League.
People get benched, but I don't think they leave the team voluntarily. And the reason why they don't do that is because they have a standing contract with a minimum payment obligation. So, if they get benched, they're still going to want to sit there and collect their checks and figure out how they're going to move into it. As
far as I know, Forgiven is doing that, but I just don't get the element that you just saying he's not going to play. If you bench, right? We'll suck it up and just sit on the bench. Like, this almost seems like you can't handle being benched. Anyway, what do you think?
Mickey, they're bringing a chat saying Mickey did that. Like, just did,
oh yeah, he quit out, I guess. Yeah. Well, put it this way: if Mickey's the only fucking like bedfellows your way, I'd get out of that bed immediately, mate. Finn, what do you think about this topic, Mix? Obviously, last year, everyone wanted Forgiven to join your team, so you might have dodged a fucking bullet on that one, mate. So, come on, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know him personally. I haven't played a lot with him. I've only seen how he is in solo queue, which is, I mean, it's a bit annoying to play with him in solo queue, but I don't know the team situation. I don't know what happened. I don't know anything, but I think Schalke made a decision. I think they made a good decision. I think Inex is actually a really good player. I think he will increase their chance of winning a lot of games. And I think Forgiveness didn't bring to Schalke what they needed. I think he had like a fixed mentality in how he wanted to play the game, and I think it kind of hurt them more than it helped them. So, I mean, it's hard for me to say. I don't know too much about the situation to make a good statement about it.
Oh, I'll also say, by the way, just very quickly, it's not like in-game he was straight fire either. Like, he certainly, I don't think, was as bad as some people say, because the problem is he has a lot of people on Reddit who are haters of his, so they're jumping through every hoop they can to say he's crap. But I will say, like, if you just look at some basic factors of being an ADC, like, where was Aphelios and Sene? Samuel's garbage, didn't seem to play Aphelios. Like, he didn't play the meta champions. On some of the games he did play, even his like good games were like, well, he was farming well, or he was in position, but then this guy entered. It's like, that's the best case scenario. So like, I wouldn't exactly say either this was a great split individually. So I think it was also a massive mistake from him not to just own that up and just say publicly, yeah, I played really bad, you know, and that contributed. Like, again, the guy doesn't know how to basically effectively message the public. Like, you can't just speak bluntly. If you speak bluntly, actually, you'll put a lot of people off. Even if you're going to say the truth, you have to figure out how to say it, because it's how you couch what you say that will get it across to a lot of people. I don't think he understands that at all.
I think we're still working on that, Thorin.
Sure.
It's hard to do properly.
Still better than him, though. Here's the thing, mate. He looks at the past. I've come past that already.
Oh man. Well, Blaber, we won't make you weigh in on this one. Another player that I wanted to look at. Well, there's two that I want to talk about, which is two of your teammates that came up a lot here. One of them is, let's talk about Licorice first, because I think Licorice is a very interesting case. He's one of the only homegrown top laners from North America, right? He's been consistently getting better, but he also has the advantage, especially, you know, the last couple years of having the MVP jungler, and now especially having Niski on the team the last couple years, because Niski's a player that, as we discussed earlier in the show, is very selfless, and that he will lose a lot of farm in order to roam on the map and create pressure. So what are your thoughts on Licorice, considering that he does receive a lot of attention compared to, I would say, most top laners in League of Legends right now?
I mean, I think Licorice is insane, personally. He doesn't require that many resources, and he almost always wins lane and puts himself in a carry position without me needing to help him out that much. I personally don't like playing topside that much, and he's really self-sufficient, and he's really good at calling what he needs, like when he does need resources, in his timings, and he's also like a really good teammate, so I really like playing with him.
Do you have observations on Licorice there, Finn, from your Cloud9 games? You guys play a lot of similar champions. Both of you have really prioritized the Aatrox this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man of culture, I see. But, I mean, it's hard for me to judge Licorice because I only played against him like one solo game when he was here in Europe. So it's a bit hard for me to have a good assessment of him as a player. But in NA, he seems to be like far and above one of the best top laners. He seems to know what he needs to do to win the game, which is always a good thing to have as a pro player. So I can't make a like good judgment or anything because I don't have enough info or experience playing against him. But I think he looks to be a really strong player.
You say he's relatively low resources, but he actually is the second highest top laner in terms of % of CS that you guys give him after 15 minutes. Is that just because you play side lanes better than most of NA? Because that's a valid criticism, right? That other NA teams are just losing a bunch of potential farm. But he's still, in terms of the percentage that he's given, he's second only to Someday, which makes sense considering that Someday is the only carry on 100 Thieves right now.
I don't know exactly like how that stat works, but I know he's played 2 or 3 Aatrox games, and every time he plays Aatrox, he just farms all of my camps and all of the enemy's camps, and somehow ends up 5 levels above me every single game. So I'm sure that helps out his CS a lot.
Sure.
And
You have to
I know
remember,
he-
Blaber's role right now in Cloud9 is just literally to preserve Sven dying as little as possible. He's like that
He already
bodyguard that
failed.
jumps like, Mr. President, get down! And just takes the bullet for him. It's like, that's his job right now.
So when you say you don't like playing top, Blaber, where do you like playing? Like, because you guys do feed Sven a lot, you guys do roam, but we can't have this scenario where you're saying, well, you know, Niski is great, he gives up CS, he roams, you guys have very strong synergy, you're playing the map, but I don't like ganking top lane, and so I am forced to believe that if Niski isn't in mid and you guys don't like ganking top, that your priority is bot and bot alone.
Well, I do go top, like, if it looks good, but it's just like if it looks good for me, you know. But usually early game I'd like to play with Niski together, and then we move together as a duo. Either top or bot. I mean, it's usually bot.
Is there a reason behind that? Just because we talked earlier about your opinions of AD carries being extremely strong on the current patch?
Well, it's just right now I think we prioritize stacking dragons since we're always
Mm-hmm.
winning early and scaling. So we like stacking dragons so we get the soul really early, which happens like almost every game. And then after that we swap for Herald, and now I'm on my bot lane side again. So I'm just always with bot lane, as well as like Licorice is always winning lane. So I don't really need to really help him, I'd say.
Is that how you think the ideal way to play the game is right now? Is just to play around the pressure, get that early dragon, then swap up and take the Herald? Is that because you guys really haven't had any resistance to that play? People just seem to let you do it all the time.
I'm not too sure. Like, I swear our read on the the meta and like what to do is really hard because it feels like whatever we do just works.
Yes,
And
I agree with that.
No matter like even in practice, like no matter what we do, it just seems to work. So we're having like, I mean, we're not having a hard time, but it's just like it's not the easiest to see what's actually good or like what's the best way to play. Because if everything you do works, then I mean, every way is the best way, I guess. Whichever one lets you win the fastest.
How are things going with you and these topside swaps, Finn? Do you just expect that your team's going to play away from you all the time? Is that the ideal way to snowball the game right now or to get leads?
I think it all depends on drafts. I think draft decides so much of the game right now and how you want to play. And teams obviously draft for how they want to play. If you want to play heavily bot side, then you usually put more emphasis in draft to getting a strong bot side matchup. I think generally it's a bit easier playing top side and getting leads there, but I think the leads you get bot side are a lot more impactful in general. It's easier to snowball with a bot lane lead than a top lane lead, so to say. So therefore, I think as a top laner on this patch, just being self-sufficient, I think is really valuable because it gives your team a lot of stuff to play around with and a lot of different ways to win the game, no matter what happens in the game, I guess. So I think, I mean, it kind of co-aligns with how Cloud9 seems to play right now. It just seems the easiest way, I guess.
So for you, one of the other players that was brought up was Hansama, who didn't have a great year last year, but is looking really good this year. I was very impressed with how strong he came out of the gate. Obviously, on your team, I have a soft spot for Hansama and Alfari because they were on Misfits when I was running the team before they were even 17 and able to be in this league. So I've been kind of watching them since before they were even capable of playing professionally. Was there a big turnaround for Hansama? Why is he back in this way after having not such an awesome year?
I think on Misfits, it was just not the best team. I think as an AD carry, if you're on a bad team, it's kind of hard to show greatness. I think here he has a lot more resources to work with, a lot more. I think he's just way more motivated now as well because we're actually doing well. If you're losing every scrim block every day, you feel really sad after a while. But I think he found his passion again for the game and he's grinding a lot, so it's nice to see.
Yeah, I've got a little bit I can say on that. Basically, like, again, this is just like tendencies of players from teammates, interviews and stuff. Supposedly, Hansama as an AD carry already was someone who wasn't like a very vocal AD carry like he just played. And the problem was they put him in a lane with Gorilla, who didn't seem like that was something he was taking much of a lead on, because famously Gorilla played with Prey, who was the guy who actually was doing half the shit in the lane and seemingly led the lane and did whatever they were going to do on the map. So I think they just put together a bad squad in that sense. And if you saw that Misfits team, they were god-awful in the mid-game. So as an AD carry, I don't know how you're supposed to get through lane phase, get through the mid game, and then actually do the AD carry part of the game, which is when they're in a team fight. Like that's why I can. What's mad about that Misfits team is someone should go back one day, if we ever had this technology, and do like a 30 for 30 documentary. Because I still maintain to this day, with the exception of like Max Law, and then to some degree, I think Gorilla was just in the wrong region, the wrong team. The other players, I'm not joking, I actually think were good in that Misfits team. Like, I still think Soaz and Febevan were good players. I think and Hans Sammer was decent. I think it was just literally an example of a team where it was like anti-synergy. Like, nothing worked about the team, and it made everyone look bad at the same time. But I actually don't think they were all bad players. I think it was legit an example of where, like, I sort of see individually what all the roster moves were, but it didn't work at all in the game. That's why, if you notice, everyone's revived their careers pretty much except Max Law and Gorilla.
Well, Gorilla, I mean, he's playing right now in Korea, so it's not terrible for him, right?
It's not appalling, but he's never going to be like an elite player again, I think.
Well, I think Gorilla's on a career trajectory into coaching, frankly. But I don't know, like, I'm curious, looking at Misfits last year, Finn, do you have any insight into what happened? Because coming into the season, obviously that roster was extremely hyped. It looked like that was going to be potentially a contender for the title.
I don't know. It's hard to say, because I think they just had a lot of disagreements on how they wanted to play. Coaching staff and players alike, they kind of had not the same. They didn't look at the game the same way. I think they all, not all of them, but some people had different views. It's from what I understand. I think it just didn't work out that well for them. I don't know too much, so I don't have like a fixed opinion about it. So,
man, alive, it's like we pulled in a couple of kids off the street here and they're like, I don't know nothing, governor. I won't say anything. I wasn't there. I wasn't with him. Like, all right, just going to ask opinions, guys. You're not going to prison. No one's going to prison.
You actually won't get in trouble for anything
but
that you
believe
say
it
on
or
the show.
not, a lot of what people do on these shows, guys, is going to blow your mind. Speculation. You just sort of say what you think is probably going on. You don't actually have to know, what that player is doing and why he did it. You can just make it up. It's going to blow your mind, but I'll be making a lot of this shit up. Just taking a guess, aren't I? Just having a little guess at what's in this brain. Sometimes I'll be talking complete shit.
Exactly. Once you get older, you just realize that you can't possibly know anything anyway, or have a complete set of information.
Exactly.
So you might as well just extrapolate on the information that you know based on your experience.
There you go. Some of us have built a whole career out of it.
It's exactly the same way you play League of Legends right now. You can't have vision everywhere anymore, so you just have to extrapolate based on the information that you have, how you're going to play this game.
That statement would blow the Koreans' mind. It's like, no, you must just get all the vision everywhere. It's like, well, we couldn't do that, or could we? No, yeah, keep trying. It's like, no, it doesn't work right now. Then don't do anything. All right.
Literally do nothing and lose slowly.
Exactly.
Were there any other teams or players that you want to talk about this week, Thorin? Do you want to talk about T1 at all? Because T1 has been... We should probably talk a little bit about some of the...
We can talk about that a bit if you want.
The LCK stuff, just because I think T1 came out of the gates quite strong, and there's quite a number of contenders for the top of the pack right now, with Dragon X being undefeated so far.
LCK looks really competitive this
Yeah,
week.
Africa also looking good. Gen G recently narrowly losing that series to T1, even though T1 sort of just gave them a free win with one of the drafts in Game 2. It's been a competitive landscape, even though I don't really like the way that the teams are playing overall. I think it's very predictable and formulaic, so I don't think it's going to work anywhere outside of a gentleman's agreement environment in LCK. But
one thing that shocked me a lot about the split in LCK is I think actually a lot of the top laners are playing really poorly. I think except for like Keen and Summit, who I think are super good, I've been not very impressed by the rest of the top lane pool in Korea. I see a lot of like really silly mistakes coming out from a lot of them. Like, I mean, a lot of them are really inexperienced, right? Like Kana. But even like people like Sword and Rascal, I think these guys are making really weird mistakes that I wouldn't expect from Korea. So it's a bit weird to see.
What do you think about Keen as a top laner? Because he was so dominant in the Kespa Cup that we saw. It was ridiculous. I mean, putting on hard carry performances. Is he the best top laner in the world right now, in your opinion?
I mean, he's really, 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 really good. That's for sure. I can't tell like how good, because I obviously can't play against him, right? But from watching him play and seeing like these pro view clips from him, he seems really strong, and he's always at the right spot, and he gives his team. Okay, so the team gives him resources, and he gives them back to his team, which is really good. A lot of top laners just take the resources and they just chill on the sideline forever and don't really do much with them. But what he does, he's really smart when he moves around on the map and doesn't like sit back and chill in the game. He actually takes a lot of proactive calls and makes stuff happen, which I think is really impressive as a top laner.
Do you have any junglers you like watching, Blaber, over in the LCK?
I've always liked watching Cuz. I mean, for me, just jungle seems a bit weird right now because I mean everyone's just farming and they're not. I mean, junglers aren't really doing anything. They're just farming and then playing with their team for objectives. So it doesn't seem like anyone's doing anything unique. Like pathing wise, they're just farming their own jungle, full clearing, basing, full clearing, basing, and playing champs that are generally good at that. I think Spirit's been playing really well this split.
He has been playing, recently, like the Karthus and stuff like that, though.
Yeah.
That is about clearing and then basing.
Yeah. I think he's been playing pretty well, and I think Tarzan's not been playing as well either. I do think it has to do with him losing Chovy, though. I mean, I think that guy's insane, so I'm sure it's much easier jungling with Chovy.
Have you seen any of the, what's interesting to me is Cuz on T1, because losing Clid was huge for T1 because he was arguably their best player last year. And Cuz has always been an interesting player to me because back in 2015, 2016, before he turned 17 and was pro eligible, this guy was #1 on the solo queue ladder. He was the most hyped prospect coming out of Korea. And then he kind of did nothing for a really long time. I remember that I think he was signed to one of the Chinese teams originally before he ended up joining. No, I guess he was just signed to Longzhou. I think he was maybe signed to a Chinese prospect team before he turned 17. But he never really, he had an okay debut in 2016, but he never really lived up to the expectations. And now here we are, and he's on T1 4 years later, but it just seems like he's had a very slow development process.
Like I'll contrast it like this, right? If you have to remember, he was on the King's Own Dragon X team that won in, I think it was season 7 summer or whatever, and won the tournament over SKT. And at the time, they were the best team in Korea, right? They were the one that actually shit the bed at Worlds, sadly, and just went out against Samsung in that round of 8. And that team, right, was the one where everyone except Cos was supposed to be a banger. That was where they had like Prime Khan, when he was tearing everyone up. BDD was the MVP of the league. The bot lane was praying Gorilla. So like this team was monster on paper. And so the joke is back then in pro play, he would make so many drastic mistakes that I remember when they won the LCK championship, I even said this might be the worst player to ever win the Korean championship. Like that's like the level. It was almost like the joke was they won without even needing a jungler. It was ridiculous. So, but at the same time, as you alluded to before, that has always been the story the whole time, including through that period, which is that if you ever went over and looked in solo queue, though, he would be like top 10 with an account anytime he wanted. It was one of those players where it's like, something just doesn't translate from what they can do as a player into a pro game. But the last year or so, he has been way better. And I can actually see why T1 took the gamble on him. It looks like whatever happened, he made the transition finally. And now he's unleashing that potential. So I agree. If you hear that they signed anyone and they had to let Clid go, it sounds like that has to be a downgrade. But actually, it's pretty, I'd say that's like a push right now. Right? It's pretty 50-50 as to whether that was even a bad trade to make.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Cuz pickup was pretty good for T1 for sure in the offseason. I think he was rank 1 last season too, at the end of the season. So he seemed really good in 2019, and it looks like he's playing well now too.
One thing T1 has always done, though, is they've always taken a lot of these ladder monsters in terms of raw mechanical players, and they've turned them into good players that win titles on T1. How much value do you guys think having number one in Korean ladder has, or being number one on the ladder, really grinding it? Is that the best indicator of raw talent, or do you need how valuable is a coach to turn that raw talent into something else? How much do you guys? I don't even know how much you guys play ladder right now.
Well, I play a lot, but I think it doesn't really even need to be like a good coach. I think it's even more worthwhile to have really experienced teammates that know a lot and help you. I think experienced teammates can teach you more than a really good coach ever could.
It's probably a flaw within the coaching pool of League of Legends. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. Isn't your coach a former professional player? He's Freddie. He used to play Mundo.
Yeah.
No, but I get what he means. Like on his team, for example, he has Vander, and if you just look at his team, like I don't think it's a coincidence that they've actually had like solid map rotations. Like, it seems they know what they do in the mid game. Like having a player who's played that long, they can give you just insight into what to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think coaching in League of Legends is less about teaching people macro and more like making people realizing themselves what they need to do. In a way, it's a bit hard to say. I don't know how to express it in words, but it's not like that's about it.
No, I think it is important because as a coach, you can't be there on stage giving directions. So I do agree that the most valuable thing you can do is cause the player to have these realizations on their own in game. And that's also the hardest thing to do, is to change the way their thought process works so that they will make the correct decision.
Yeah.
Or at least that they have the tools to evaluate, because you also can't coach for every single situation that a player is going to see in a game.
Yeah, I mean, players just need to be ready to adapt in game and not like going with a fixed mindset. I think this is really important.
Does Reaper help you with that, Blaber?
Yeah. I mean, regarding like Finn's point earlier about the teammates thing, it was more, look, when I started playing Academy, I had Jensen as my mid, Sneaky Smoothie as my bot. So I feel like as a player, it's much easier to play with experienced teammates, like when you're first learning, because you learn the game much faster. And then Reaper, he's really good at helping players play to their strengths and realizing what they need to do in a situation. And I think he's really helped me with that, because I used to have problems, and maybe still a little bit, where I wouldn't really know what to do mid game, and then I try to make plays that obviously aren't going to work. And he's helped me realize that and been helping me with that for sure.
Well, good stuff. I don't know if we want to talk more about the LCK. Obviously, we don't have any other LPL. I'm pretty good on our chats for this week. What about you? We got any final topics, Thorin?
I think that's pretty good. We went all around the houses on this one.
Are we going to do an actual LCK episode next week?
Yeah, I think we should get some proper like LCK only dedicated people and just go super deep on it. And even if that ends up being the most viewed episode, we'll know deep down that we talked about what matters.
I don't know about that, because it might be really boring considering the games haven't been that inspiring. But I guess we do have. Let's take a look at a schedule this next week for LCK.
No, there's the Dragon X versus T1 game for a start off, so that'll be a
first
banger.
off, Dragon X plays both T1 and Gen G this next week.
Sounds like the perfect week.
Those are pretty big games. Africa Sandbox, well, it's less exciting now. Africa KT, well, that's kind of
go through the Rolodex, see if there's anyone with bad eyesight and an encyclopedic knowledge of children's cartoon shows who wants to come on, or a girl who asks people questions and asks them to say things in English, or a guy who's like sort of Australian but for some reason has a good personality. See who's out there. That's all I'm saying. There's people out there wanting.
Well, I suppose it can't be too bad of a time for LS considering he's streaming right now, so he seems to keep a weird schedule anyway.
Plus, I'm sure we can just get some extended 20-minute digression about itemization that no one really cares in the modern day about what he's incredibly passionate about. So God bless.
How much money do you think LS has earned from shitting on Morello Namicon? Like, if you had to put a dollar value on the amount of subscribers and people who watch this stream because of Morello Namicon, that is probably... It probably actually, if you translated what's the gold value of that in game, and you translate that weight in gold to literal dollars, I'm pretty sure that's how much money he's made at this point in time. it's gotta be like 50 grand at least. at least.
Put it this way, whether it's cost efficient to buy it in the game, it clearly is for him to talk about it.
Yeah, it's incredibly cost
Killing it,
efficient.
Gold efficiency is off the roof.
Good for him. He found something funny that people have latched onto. We all dream of that. Yes, people are saying right now in chat they sub for the rants. Very good. Well, we'll see if he will agree to get on the stream next time. But thank you to Blaber and Finn for joining us for these couple of hours. Thank you to AT&T and Puma and Microsoft for doing this. We'll see you at the exact same time next week, and that'll be it.